Because we're going to jump around the agenda. We're going to start with item 2.8, recommendations from the Vision for Success, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force. Deputy Chancellor Gonzalez.
All right, good morning, President Epstein and Vice President Haynes, board members, Chancellor Oakley. This item presents you the recommendations from the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force, and I will be joined by three other presenters. The President of the Academic Senate, John Stanskis, Board Member Hildy Aguinaldo, and President of Imperial Valley College, Marta Garcia. So today's presentation summarizes 10 months of statewide engagement and partnerships. We've provided you with a lengthy document with 4 different attachments. We will only briefly cover a few slides for you. I will cover the background of this issue. John Stanskis will discuss the theory of change that the task force designed, and then we will cover the 3 main recommendations from each of the different perspectives. I do want to highlight that this work was a request by the Board of Governors in November of 2018 after reviewing a report called Left Out by the Campaign for College Opportunity, where the Chancellor's Office was asked to do 2 things. 1, analyze the utility of designing a new goal for the system as a part of the Vision for Success, and 2, bringing forward a set of statewide structural changes and recommendations to the board. As you know, the Chancellor's Office and the Academic Senate spent 6 months doing this work around the state, and the real purpose of that was to develop a common understanding as well as a commitment across the system for this issue. The work led us to different conferences around the state, and it also concluded in a diversity task force on February 8th and 9th of 2019. Throughout this process, we affirmed 3 things, and it's a part of the slides that you have in front of you. The first is that equal employment opportunity is the law in the state of California and in many other states. The second is that research demonstrates that students who are served by a diverse faculty and staff are better educated and better prepared for leadership, citizenship, and the professional world. And lastly, that making equal employment opportunity and diversifying our workforce is directly connected to goal number 5 of the Vision for Success, which asks our system to close equity gaps over the next 5 years by 40% and completely eliminate them in the next 10 years. As we move forward with this work, it was important for our task force to learn from the past. As some of you know, Proposition 209 passed in 1996, and there was a lot of confusion over several years within our system. A common misconception that Prop 209 eliminated our responsibility to implement equal employment opportunity. The Chancellor's Office tried to rectify this through legal opinions in 2002, so that's the task force that you see in front of you, as well as efforts in 2015-16. The initial 2002 legal opinion was a result of a consultation council, EEO, and diversity task force, which was inspired after several districts eliminated faculty diversity internships in the state and stopped conducting outreach to ethnic and gender publications. In 2015, new momentum emerged, and the Chancellor's Office revamped the EEO and Diversity Advisory. This was a result of direct legislative action. In fact, SB 826 in 2016 required the Chancellor's Office to provide a report on all EEO reports in the state. In addition to that, the state legislature that year awarded EEO funds, and so our office had to create a formula to disseminate those dollars. Currently this year, we are seeing that this progress is slowing down, so that's the table that you have in front of you. And this year, districts will receive $45,000 for their EEO plans. So again, districts, not colleges. The 2009 Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force engaged faculty, Chancellor's Office staff, CEOs, trustees, HR managers, Board of Governors, and researchers. This task force reviewed historical data, empirical research, and heard from statewide experts. And we have provided you with all of that information. We also know that today we have a few of those task force members in the audience. The one thing I wanted to conclude with here is that we were able to have courageous conversations as a part of this task force because of this incredible group of individuals who went from a transformation of considering whether we should have a goal for diversity to acknowledging that we can no longer have siloed conversations about diversity, that they needed to occur in partnership with equity and inclusion. So our work went from discussing a goal to discussing a statewide commitment to eventually realizing that what we really needed was an integrated plan for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our work occurred over 6 months. Individuals arrived between 9:30 and left at 4:30 p.m. And what we realized throughout the process was that we needed to bring in additional experts, and so we did that work by bringing in faculty of color who could inform us about faculty of color retention strategies, as well as learning about unconscious bias and cultural competency from a statewide and campus-wide perspective. I'm going to hand it over to John Stanskus, who will cover a bit more of the data and the theory of action.
So I think we did start with a literature review across the country, and we're not alone in California. The lack of diversity among faculty is a national problem, and we can see that among all faculty and degree-granting post-secondary institutions, 76% of the faculty are white in the country. In California, 50% of our students identify by an underrepresented minority classification. And the racial and ethnic diversity of our student population continues to be more diverse than any other category that we have. This is the graph that we showed you last November, where it doesn't matter if you can read which ones are here exactly, but you can see the top line has to be the students. That is the underrepresented minorities by classification of our student population over the last 10 years. The red line is our classified staff, the green line is our administrators, and then there are two more lines. The one on the bottom is our academic temporary or part-time faculty, and the one above that is the full-time faculty. This is what we presented to you in November, and some of the discussion that we had as a task force is that the data is important, that we went all over the state talking about this data to start a conversation and to start an action plan, but data doesn't drive change, people do. People who are invested in that change are the ones who can make a systemic difference moving forward. And that leads us to our theory of change affirmations that we as a task force agreed to. Remember, this is a task force representative of many different stakeholder groups, including members of the Board of Governors, agreeing that this was our work, that faculty and staff diversity is a driver for educational achievement and social mobility of our students, and therefore, as a driver, faculty and staff diversity directly support the vision for success, goals, and commitments, all of them. That to be intentional and proactive in addressing faculty and staff diversity, the community colleges and districts must shift from a practice of compliance to partnerships across organizational systems and departments and divisions to design, implement, and reinforce policies, procedures, and individual behaviors that serve to cultivate inclusive ecosystems focused on equity and mutual respect, to recruit, retain, and support a diverse workforce that's responsive to our students. One of the things that we learned from our literature research is that having a more diverse faculty and staff overall improves student outcomes. It is correlated by the overall percentage at the college, not necessarily which instructor or staff member is interacting with which student. And that's important because it leads to the idea that there is a cultural or transformational change that occurs at the institution as a result of that. And when we talk about transforming a culture, We divided that into 3 categories: the interactional, the institutional, and the individual here. And that really focusing on any one of them was not going to be successful. So the Chancellor's Office, working with the regulatory arm of EEO, is not enough to transform change. That the will of the Academic Senate, who has been publishing papers about this since Prop 209 passed in 1996, about our concern about this, is not enough to change the way we do this. That it takes all of these organizations to commit to working on transformational cultural change together. And that's what we found in our task force with representative groups representing the system.
So we're now going to transition over to just briefly covering the 3 recommendations, but we all agreed to briefly cover this slide, and I would like to ask Board Member Aguinaldo to get us started on this slide.
Absolutely. I think on this slide, we were supposed to be telling you what this work has meant to us personally. And before I do that, I'd just like to take a moment to tell you guys that it's much more fun to be on this side of the dais than that side. Over the course of the past 10 months, we've had the opportunity to hear stories from a lot of different folks. Dr. Luke Lara is one of them. He was talking about the mental health and emotional toll that exclusion has on faculty of color. I got to hear from Dr. Marta Garcia, sitting to my left, who told me in passing about how she had already been organically integrating students into the faculty hiring process without much fanfare. No matter how different these stories were, there was always something about it that resonated with me personally. I think we all have personal experience with feeling left out at some point or another, and we all know somebody who's an everyday hero, doing things without any fanfare when no one's really looking or paying attention. And that very human and personal connection to this work is, I think, what keeps us pushing the envelope on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So as the great Riverside City College president, Gregory Anderson, said yesterday, there's no light between where we hope to achieve and where we will achieve. And that describes our work on this task force. I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge everyone who has touched this project for their extraordinary collaboration and contributions, and hopefully all of you who will help bring our proposals alive.
Good morning. First of all, I want to start by commending you for taking a strong stand. And when it comes to enhancing diversity, equity, and inclusion in the system and across the 115 community colleges of California. As a minority female CEO, as a first-generation college graduate in my family, as an Imperial Valley College graduate, as a proud daughter of farm workers, I am so proud of the work we have accomplished, and I just thank you wholeheartedly for making this a priority for this system. It has been truly meaningful to be part of this task force because I really believe that we have the opportunity, and you have the opportunity to make historical change and lead the way as a state. Thank you.
You've asked me to do something difficult, Daisy, because I am supposed to speak for all faculty and not have a personal opinion about anything. I will try to do both. On behalf of all faculty, I think I can tell you that the executive committee is committed to this work. We have a work plan. My first meeting with the chancellor in my role representing the faculty, this was the topic of conversation. This was how can we agree to work on this together to start down the road of systemic change. And I think it's important that you all know that the Academic Senate is committed to this. We have made it a goal last year, this year, and for the foreseeable future, because we are committed to this work. Thank you for providing the support and opportunity for us to do this work collaboratively, which is the only way I think we will make a difference moving forward on behalf of the faculty of the state of California and the executive committee of the Academic Senate. In terms of personally, I come talk to you all the time, and this was the first morning I was actually nervous again. And I get nervous talking to people when I care a lot about the outcome, that I think it's so important that I am worried in that way. I think all of us can think of a time where we have been excluded in some way, where we have had assumptions made about us or our abilities based on characteristics that we can't change, that we don't have any control over. I think we can all look at educational institutions as well and remember really wonderful times that we were supported, that we were encouraged, that someone believed in us. And it is maximizing those latter times that we need to do to affect systemic change.
Thank you for letting me dust off my dissertation after ignoring it for several years. Some of you know that my expertise is in worksite diversity, and so I got a chance to use my background to help move this system forward. And I couldn't have done it without the Foundation Success Center and Ebony Lopez in our office and all of the incredible partners that you see on this slide. Every single person on this slide, the different advisory committees that reviewed this work, the Consultation Council, improved this work. I want to specifically thank FAC for highlighting that our task force had neglected to address part-time faculty and that we needed to do more to think about accountability and the implementation stages, because this is the easy part. Creating a plan is the easy part. The implementation is the hard part. So now let's get into our recommendations. Dr. Garcia?
The recommendations to the Board of Governors are designed to be integrated strategies with an ecosystem of support. It is important to emphasize that they are aligned with the vision for success and they are integrated in the commitments depicted in the vision for success. It is important to emphasize that it requires an ecosystem of support. It means that we do it collectively, that if you really want to impact change in this system, it takes all of us. It takes more than you sitting here. It takes more than the Chancellor's Office. It takes more than us at a single community college. It takes all of us, which includes, and it's led by ensuring that we prioritize our students and include faculty, staff, and administration. The first recommendation is to accept the proposed strategies outlined in the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Integration Plan to integrate diversity, equity, and inclusion into the vision for success and direct the Chancellor's Office to present a preliminary timeline for the integration plan to the Board of Governors at the January 2020 board meeting, with a description of the implementation team and a recommendation for additional oversight based upon the 2020-21 state budget outlook. So the integration plan is the blueprint as to how we're going to do this work. And as I stated previously, it is important that we recognize that it takes a collective effort. The work we have achieved as a task force was the initial foundation, but the real work begins with the integration plan. The next slide depicts a strategy and two activities. The Vision for Success commitment number 3, we will pair high expectations with high support. The strategy is to establish a pipeline programs to diversify faculty applicant pools, Tier 1 activity reflects a short-term goal. The Academic Senate, along with the Chancellor's Office, will partner to provide statewide guidance and clarity on minimum qualifications, preferred versus required. This is critical because we're doing this differently at every college, and I just want to share the example from my personal experience at IVC. We previously had an equivalency committee that is no longer in place who did not approve anyone unless they met minimum qualifications for many years. So this work is critical to someone like me because it'll help us be able to hire people that don't necessarily meet the minimum qualifications as depicted in the education code, but yet are qualified. And at this point, and at institutions, they're not being enabled the opportunity to impact our students. Tier 2 is a longer-term goal, and it is the Chancellor's Office will secure funding to create a statewide internship program and a pipeline for graduate students to teach at California community colleges. There are model programs across the country, and the Chancellor's Office could utilize those model programs as a guide and tailor them. And they're specifically, those model programs are specifically in collaboration with HSIs and HBUs. So targeting minority students who eventually, graduate students who eventually could become faculty members or administrators on our campuses.
One of the first things that we did as a task force was to establish a baseline of our understanding as to what diversity is, but also what equity and inclusion were. The product of our discussions resulted in two main recognitions. First, that diversity is not the same as equity and inclusion, though they are all related. Diversity refers to differences among individuals or groups. Equity involves recognizing that an individual's life experiences result in different barriers to success, and the tools and opportunities to overcome those barriers are not evenly distributed. Inclusion has an objective component that looks at the organizational distribution of diverse faculty, as well as a subjective component that looks at whether diverse faculty and staff feel as if they are secure in their place of employ. The second recognition was the moral value that we place on diversity should represent a social justice perspective that holds equity at its core. So we compare this complex understanding to what we currently have in our Title V regs. As stated in Title V of the regs under Chapter 4, but only for employees, not even for students, under Section 53001, it states, diversity means a condition of broad inclusion in an employment environment that offers equal employment opportunity for all persons. It requires both the presence and respectful treatment of individuals from a wide range of ethnic, racial, age, national origin, religious, gender, sexual orientation, disability, and socioeconomic backgrounds. While this definition may have worked at the time, we recognized that this definition does not truly capture how we feel today. So we set out to draft a statement that more accurately represented our values and commitment around diversity, equity, and inclusion. The product of our collaboration is in your board packets at page 75. As you can see, the proposed DEI statement demands an appreciation of diversity, but it also requires so much more. It asks us to affirm our commitment to providing equal educational opportunity, not just equal employment opportunity. It asks us to affirm our awareness that institutional discrimination and implicit bias exists. It asks us to affirm our understanding that our awareness must be operationalized with policies and procedures in order to effectuate change, and that we must accept accountability and continually and consciously augment our understanding. But most importantly, it's a call to action. By adopting the statement today, the board will be taking action, historic action, to set forth for the first time our system's position on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our recommendation also asks the board to direct the Chancellor's Office to propose changes to Title V, our mission, the Equal Employment Opportunity Plan templates, and multiple measure certification forms by a date certain of September 2020. So I wholeheartedly encourage my fellow board members to join me in adopting this recommendation.
The third recommendation is the budget change proposal, also in your packet, requesting directed money, $60.4 million in ongoing funding and $16 million in one-time funding for the 2020-21 budget year, directed to this work. One of the other things that I think as a task force we realized or knew is that this work can't be done absent directed funding, and that commitment is important to being able to affect many of the changes we wish to make. I have also been directed by the Executive Committee of the Academic Senate to tell you of all the budget change proposals that are in your packet, this is our #1 priority for faculty. This is the one. And I would urge you to adopt this and champion this as our Board of Governors representing our system.
So with that, I think we'd like to take your questions.
Okay, thank you very much. That was a great presentation. I do need to warn the board, this is the worst part of my job, but we have a lot to cover in the next hour and 40 minutes, and so we hope you can keep your comments concise and we can move forward. Thank you. Member Zaragoza.
I just want to really thank the Diversity Task Force because I have been a part of it, and it has been just incredible seeing all the work that we've done. And I can tell all the board members that it was a lot of debating, it was a lot of work, it was a lot of going back and forth on things, and it truly we were able to keep students at the center, which is something that I loved about it. I mean, in the first sentence of the statement, it's all about students, and this is why we're doing the work that we're doing. But most of all, I also want to pinpoint that, a lot of schools and a lot of places in higher education love to outline that, they're working on diversity and all those different things, and a lot of times they're just empty promises. But I think this is really groundbreaking because it shows that we're not afraid to say that we've made mistakes in the past and that we have not always been a system of diversity, and that we're ready to look at that and challenge ourselves and take it upon ourselves to make a commitment to change. And I think that's why it's strong, is because it's requiring action. It's requiring us to do our absolute best and not give up, essentially. And so I just want to, uplift this item and recommend that we all pass it today.
Member Costa.
I wanted to actually follow up with the task force on a comment that Dr. Keith Curry made yesterday during the student housing presentation, and he mentioned housing and cost of living as one of the impediments he has to hiring diverse faculty. And I'm just wondering if you thought about that in your BCP proposals, or I know there's a fellowship, but if that was addressed by the task force at all.
Great, I've been nominated to take the question. Not in, Board Member Costa, not in terms of housing. I think one of the challenges for our districts have been the limited funds that have been awarded. The proposal that you have in front of you for 2021 would augment the EEO plan funding, but also outlines professional development dollars. One of the things that we heard from faculty of color is the need for training, but I think also more flexibility for districts, and that could be one way in which we could do it. If this were approved by the Board of Governors, we would have to continue to work with the Academic Senate and all of our partners in the Consultation Council to figure out what that might look like. But without having the funds, that was not something that our task force discussed.
Member Rawlings.
Thank you, everyone. I just want to say when this began, I was kind of hopeful for what the outcome would be, and I would say that this is beyond my wildest expectations that we would get back. I think it's different than what we originally discussed, but this is actually what we were intending, in my opinion, at least, what I had in mind. This will be absolutely transformative, and the point I want to make is a couple things. This is a big leap forward for us, but it is just the first one. I think there's so much more that when we do this, there's so much more that we will be able to do following adoption of these recommendations and actually getting those resources out to the field and actually putting this into effect. And it will be transformative. And as that happens, we're going to discover new issues and new approaches that we could take to advance this issue further. And so I'm hoping that we'll be able to keep some semblance of a check-in in this process so that we'll be able to capitalize on the investment you've all made with your time here in these recommendations. And I would also like just to point out that something that we talked about before was that when you have the level of diversity, inclusion, and equity among the employee base at all of our different colleges, it is not just the students of color that do better. All students do better when they have a diverse experience at our colleges. And so in that way, this will be transformative in multiple ways, and I'm looking forward to seeing us adopt this.
Member Grande.
I also want to echo Member Rawlings' comments and pay particular attention to recommendation number 1, where we're looking at the Tier 1 and Tier 2 activities, and the idea of creating a statewide internship program is by far the most impactful that we could make, but I'd like the plan to be more diverse than the diversity that's already being attempted, and not just a pipeline for graduate students, but also reaching down into industry apprenticeship programs so our career education programs could benefit from diversity as well.
So when we have looked at the entire plan, it's really from our students to our faculty. Both of those take about 6 years, but for the associate's degree, through industry experience and back to the faculty is a 6-year requirement in the minimum qualifications. And so finding linkages to faculty as they move through their bachelor's and master's degrees, or they move into industry and back into the community college system, are both addressed in the larger plan.
Vice President Haynes.
So I couldn't let this opportunity slip away. So I'm emotional about this. As we go through what we believe to be the important elements of transformative change, this is one of the things that is at the top of the list. And it is clear that, and I want to give my thanks to everyone who served. I know many of the participants, and so I know that there were some minds changed. It might have taken 10 months, but there were some minds changed as a result of this process. And then it gave credence to the work that we need to do. So I really want to commend all that participated in it. So the $60.4 million is the sort of down payment on the work that needs to be done. There are some markers to that. There were indeed courageous conversations, but they were courageous conversations among a few. The goal, the implementation is about having these courageous conversations on 115 colleges, 73 districts, and what that translates into to be. It's going to go into what we consider to be minimum qualifications, and I think there needs to be, and support changes to Title V. We've operated on that the first and foremost qualification is an expert, to come with academic and expert criteria of where we've studied and all of those things. That is critical to this piece. But I would say that the number 2, and I think that sometimes those will have to be switched, two goes first and 1 goes second, is how we want to diversify and what voices do we need to have on our campuses to engage in what our students, who our students are and what they need. And so that number 2 about that diversity, that equity, that inclusion is right there, almost in equal standing in many cases to who needs to be on our campus, who are sort of the thought leaders, who are the educational leaders, and what we need on our campuses. So I wanted to say that, and we're going to have to be conscious of that. And then finally, I'll use Los Rios as an example. On Wednesday, our board approved literally hundreds of temporary part-time faculty. I need to ask, because many trustees, and I'll speak from a trustee's lens, we thought for many years that our part-time faculty was much more representative in terms of folks, of faculty of color. And we found out through, in many ways, through what we have heard and what we have learned over the last several years, that that is indeed not the case. So I now need to go back, and I've already asked my chancellor to explain to me all of those folks, what is the breakdown of that faculty, and in what departments are they teaching in, because that's critical. And then finally, that 60 million means that there needs to be an oversensitivity to faculty of color, faculty that, that are diverse in many respects, because at the end of the day, if we don't change who we're hiring using the $60 million, we have a problem. So everyone needs to be conscious what these dollars are for, and to have that hat on when we start to interview, who we're interviewing, and what we will accept, or do we need to go back and continue to work on making certain that we are hiring the right folks. And the right folks are broadly, but the right folks.
Member Perigo.
I just wanted to ask briefly, because I know that there are a lot of districts that have had this focus over the last few years. I work at a college that's very focused on this issue. So in looking at the data, I'm just wondering if we disaggregate it and look at maybe the last 5 years of hiring, do we see improvement in this area, or is it still just as skewed as it is when we look at the faculty as a whole body? Because, you know, we're talking about people who were hired 30 years ago that are still in the pool. So.
You do see improvement if you look at it year to year. It's small, though,
Right.
right? We're talking about 62,000 faculty and hiring 500 maybe at most.
Yeah.
So, so we're really looking at long-term changes that need to happen here.
I mean, that's helpful to me, since I know that there are some districts that are focusing, and if we're still not seeing better results, then we need to do a deeper dig on what we're doing.
And I think that's one of the recommendations that we have as we move forward, is that the institution needs to look at how it did. How is it doing each year? If you're looking for the giant lever to move, that's going to take time.
Right.
But you can track year to year how you're doing. And elevating the 2 minimum qualifications so that they are equal is an important step.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I believe we have some public comment.
So I'm going to call up the 4 speakers, Dr. Debbie Klein, Linda Vasquez, Linda Waugh, and Rebecca Silbert.
I guess I'll begin. Is that okay? Good morning, President Epstein, Vice President Haynes, Chancellor Oakley, and the Board of Governors. I am Linda Waugh. I am a trustee at Pasadena City College. I'm also the president of the trustees for the league. And today I'm coming wearing the hat of one of the conveners of the joint caucuses of the community colleges. Many of you have seen me many times talking about data desegregation. So I want to thank you all for having supported that. What's now in the CCC Apply. We are still doing more work. But as has been said, the data is the data, and then there comes a time to take action. So I can see from the comments that are being made by the board here that there isn't going to be needed a lot of convincing for this. This is a very important initiative. But I just want to say on behalf of the joint caucuses that we are in full support of this, as data desegregation was one of our primary focuses for our students. we see this as also being linked to the success of our students. And so I want to encourage you all to support this as we, in the Joint Caucuses, who represent almost 90% of the students of the, not only Asian Americans, the African Americans, the Latinos, the veterans, and now the LGBTQ, we see this as being tangential to the success of our students. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, President Epstein, Chancellor Oakley, members of the board. My name is Linda Vasquez, and I'm with the Campaign for College Opportunity, a higher education policy and advocacy organization dedicated to ensuring that every California student has an opportunity to go to college, and when they get there, they have the support and resources to graduate. I'm proud to sit here before you and express our strong support for the Diversity Task Force recommendations. Deputy Chancellor Daisy Gonzalez shared a groundbreaking report, Left Out: How Exclusion in California's Colleges and Universities Hurts Our Values, Our Students, and Our Economy, and that lifted the veil on the drastic disparity between California's public college and university students and higher education leaders and faculty when it comes to race and gender. Thank you to the Board of Governors for recognizing the urgent need to address faculty and leadership diversity across California community colleges by establishing the Vision for Success, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force. While the community college system has made strides to improve student equity and equal employment opportunity programs, faculty diversity needs significant investment to better serve our diverse community college student body. It is simply not enough to embrace diversity. We need diversity-related action. We appreciate the utilization of the Left Out report to guide these difficult but important conversations. These recommendations put forth by the task force are necessary first steps towards increasing diversity in faculty hiring, but it will take your continued attention and commitment to implementation to ensure a diverse faculty body and system leadership needed to best serve our students. We commend the thoughtful addition of a system-wide vision statement on diversity meant to guide how the system thinks about faculty hiring practices. We also believe the 2020 and 2021 budget proposal should be strengthened to ensure we maximize this investment and use this opportunity to significantly increase diverse and culturally competent faculty to best meet the needs of our students. For instance, to better understand and measure the efficacy of programmatic changes, measurable metrics should be a condition of the receipt of funds, and the proposed investment in system-wide online trainings on cultural competency and unconscious bias training should go further. The campaign asks for your support of these task force recommendations, and when adopted, that you continue to engage stakeholders like the Campaign for College Opportunity throughout its implementation. We look forward to continuing the conversation with your team, the task force, and thank you for your leadership, especially everyone in this room who's presented, those across the state who are not here present but were a critical part of these discussions, and the thoughtful work that goes into it to ensuring our community college systems best serve and represent our diverse student population.
Thank you.
Good morning, President Epstein, Vice President Haynes, Chancellor Oakley, members of the Board of Governors. My name is Debbie Klein, and I'm with the Faculty Association of California Community Colleges. FAC is incredibly grateful for and appreciative of the work of this task force. It's timely, and we can't help but make note of the national context in which we find ourselves at this moment with this current administration, what's going on with our border, and all of the sad cases of gun violence in our country. So we are so happy that this is that we are actually committing as a system to doing something about all of these issues which start in education. So FAC wanted to especially express our appreciation for the opportunity to meet with Dr. Daisy Gonzalez and the members of the task force to discuss their recommendations a little bit before they came out. We especially appreciated the task force adding our recommendation to include part-time faculty and staff within the professional development item. As you all know, 70% of our faculty right now, headcount, are part-time. And we wanted to thank the committee's work and support the increased investment in faculty included in the budget change proposal. And as I think all of you know, one of FACT's claims to fame is our advocacy work due to our work in the Capitol and relationships there. And I just wanted to say that FACT is very excited to advocate for the initial funding of these recommendations and the ongoing funding of these recommendations. Like others have said, if this work is not fully funded, then it won't go very far. So we are excited to be your advocate. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chancellor Oakley, President Epstein, Vice President Hayes, members of the board. I apologize in advance. You will hear from me twice today. I will attempt to be short both times. My name is Rebecca Silbert. I lead a nonprofit initiative on higher education for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated students. I have two very short stories. You heard from Martin Leva yesterday. He applied for a faculty position in one of your colleges and was denied because of his record, which was well over a decade old. Subsequent to that, the chancellor, with the support of his team, issued hiring guidance to open hiring pathways. It's groundbreaking, it leads the nation, and you lost him to the CSU in this round, but he'll be back. Second, in cooperation with the office, we're running a leadership institute this year for 20 colleges serving formerly incarcerated students, and each college has been required to send a student, their faculty or staff lead, and a senior administrator. The first meeting when we got them all together, we asked all the students to tell their stories, and we all listened. They range from early 20s to late 50s. Some of them made big mistakes as teenagers, did long time. Some of them had lots of small things repeatedly. All of them have family involvement. They're all over the state, ranging from both borders, inland, coasts, tiny colleges, huge colleges. Almost all of them told a very similar story. I didn't want to go. Someone made me go. My mom made me go. My girlfriend made me go. My parole agent made me go. The not uncommon, I was going to go and get Pell and then leave. And I didn't feel welcome. I didn't belong, and it wasn't for me. And then almost all of them said, and then I got there, and I saw someone who looked like me. I saw someone who understood me and knew where I had been. And so I thought, I'll just give it a shot, and they stayed. So this diversity issue cannot be understated in importance for the whole state, and thank you.
Thank you very much. So I believe Chancellor Oakley wants to wrap this up.
Thank you, Board President Epstein, and like Vice President Haynes, this stirs a little bit of emotion in me as well. Having served at Long Beach City College as the first Latino president, and trying to work with our faculty of color to raise this issue, and one of my greatest regrets is not being able to be successful at Long Beach City College. So this is something that's near and dear to my heart. But let me just be brief, because I know that this issue has been discussed at length today. I want to thank the CFT, CCA, FAC, and the statewide Senate, all the faculty who have expressed their support for this. Thank you. We're going to need your support to make this happen. I want to specifically talk to the trustees of the California Community Colleges. This is your responsibility. This is an accountability that you need to put forward, because at the end of the day, it is the trustees who set the tone for equity, diversity, and inclusion at every single one of our 73 districts. So anything we can do to support trustees, we're here to support you, but we need to hold ourselves accountable to this. And then finally, I'd like to thank all of the members of the task force. I know these were difficult conversations, and in particular, I want to do a call out to all the faculty of color in our system, many of whom have tried to raise these issues over the decades and have been pushed back. This is your opportunity. Please take advantage of it. This is our opportunity. I hope we take advantage of it.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to adopt the?
Second.
Can we all move?
There's a lot of people. I think I heard Perry and Shaw as wanting to.
Probably.
Or,
But I'll take it.
but I'll,
It was him.
oh, it's him? Was it? Harry and Anderson? Okay. Okay, and we've had a tradition of the board when there's a really important transformational change taking place that we call the roll individually, and I think this merits that. So, Castro, could you please call the roll?
Happy to do so. Hildegard Aguinaldo.
Heck yes.
Darius Anderson.
Yes.
Amy Costa.
Aye.
Tom Epstein.
Aye.
Felicia Escobar Carrillo.
Aye.
Colin Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Jolena Grande.
Aye.
Pamela Haynes.
Heck yes.
Kim Perigo.
Yes.
Jennifer Perry.
Yes, with tremendous pride in the work that's been done.
Bill Rawlings.
Aye.
Alma Salazar.
Enthusiastically, yes.
Valerie Shaw.
Yes.
Blas Villalobos.
Yes.
Alexis Zaragoza.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Deputy Chancellor. Thank you, Deputy Chancellor Gonzalez, and our two board members who participated, John, everybody, thank you very much. Okay, we're now going to move on for item 2.9, the budget and legislative request. Another action item, and Vice Chancellor Osmena, at the risk of sounding a little bit like Vice President Biden and being a broken record, we do need to move through this as quickly as possible. We've all had the written materials, and so that would be my encouragement.
Perfect. I've been told I can be clinical in these presentations, and so I will work to be more spirited as we walk through this.
Been told to channel Laura Mattoon.
Yes. So I would just, as this presentation is hopefully loading, we will not walk through all of the slides. I would just say, as in prior years, there are several requirements that the board adopt a budget request, that the board approve legislative action, that the board approve a capital outlay plan. As we've done in prior years, we have attempted to combine these into a single document to be clear with the governor and legislature about what our system's priorities are for the following year. So I just want to acknowledge first, this is work that began in May of this year when we put out a request to the system about what would folks like to see in the budget and legislative requests. We have been very grateful for the energy, the many submittals, and the consultation that we've gone through over the past 4 months. In August, we had a series of meetings, first with a variety of system constituents, and then later with the Consultation Council to build the request. And so I would just say that this request hopefully reflects a lot of the consensus that we had seen over those 2 days. Certainly, as we have put together the request for your review, we have worked to make sure that it furthers the vision for success as a top priority. That in thinking about proposals, we looked for those that were statewide in nature. That obviously that we look at evidence to see if the responses are effective in identifying problems, that they have a compelling justification for state intervention, that they consider the board's prior statements, and that ideally they align with the governor and legislature's priorities, or that we have a plan to make sure that we understand the politics in a way that allows us to effectively advocate on behalf of the system. So 2 points that I think should frame our conversation. The first is that we have talked often about constrained budgets, the likelihood of a coming recession. State agencies, policymakers are not predicting a recession yet, but what you see on that chart on the left, both of these are charts from the Legislative Analyst's Office, and I would just highlight the chart on the left that shows that Proposition 98 growth, the way in which we are funded, is going to be relatively slow. And if you look at 2020-21, the year that we're building a budget for, the cost of living adjustment, if you were simply to provide a cost of living adjustment on the existing Proposition 98 funding, that would use up all of the additional Proposition 98 resources that we're expecting. The administration in its budget guidance has highlighted 3 priorities: preserving critical state services, promoting affordability and economic opportunity, paying down debts and obligations. This is not new. And so if you look at the last sentence, again, the Department of Finance is signaling to agencies that consideration and approval of new requests is going to be very limited. This, and I will close here, really is I think the challenge that we face, that at a time when policymakers and others are telling us and other agencies we're not going to approve new spending, we have an environment where community college needs remain significant, and we certainly have big equity concerns that for the system that serves the top 100%, as Chancellor Oakley often notes, the community colleges receive less in per student spending than the UC and the CSU do. At last night's dinner, I think the conversations around a state bond highlighted a lot of the work that we need to do with the governor and legislature around, folks seeing equal funding across segments as being an appropriate response. We've long argued that that's an inequitable response, that we serve more students generally. We have more colleges and campuses. We serve more low-income students in particular, and students of color. And so I think we have a lot of work to do around how we talk to legislators and the administration about the needs of our system and how we're going to prioritize. And so I won't walk through the components of the request because they are in your packet, but I will say, I think based on the strong feedback that we received at the variety of venues that we talked about the budget request, maintaining existing programs has been an important priority. And so what you'll see is most of the new money we talk about is for that first box up there, simply funding what existing law says districts and colleges are entitled to. I would note one place where we have not historically seen cost of living adjustments is in financial aid administration. When the administration has said we should prioritize affordability, when we know oftentimes the biggest barrier to students is not being able to pay for that full cost of attendance, and when we have evidence that suggests many students who are eligible for financial aid, including the Pell Grant, aren't receiving it. And then I'll just highlight again, a big part of this request is a focus on faculty and staff, especially through the diversity, especially including the diversity task force recommendations. I will stop there. Happy to answer any questions on what's included in the request, and I would just emphasize this is your request, and so we have prepared the request in a way that responds to feedback from stakeholders and the criteria that we outlined, but certainly we want to make sure that it includes the priorities that you all have identified.
Okay. Board member comments? Member Costa.
I previewed it yesterday, but I'm going to ask that we amend our request. And the amendment would be to include funding for feasibility studies for colleges to look at student housing. And I would direct staff to derive a one-time funding number that would allow for half of our colleges to conduct the feasibility study based on the cost of the study conducted by Santa Rosa or the other colleges. And I'd further ask that staff work with the administration on funding sources outside of the guarantee that would be eligible for this, including housing bonds and other funding sources, so that we're not impacting the other asks that we have within the minimum guarantee.
Member Perry.
I would support what Member Costa just asked for. And then I just have a specific question on page 104. When you're talking about increased funding for the Next Step program, how many additional students do you think that will enable?
So I would want to clarify what we're asking for there. So we received a variety of requests for individual, essentially categorical programs. what we're saying in the request here is that we think colleges and districts should have the flexibility to determine how to use those resources. The place where they have the most flexibility for these purposes is through the existing Student Equity and Achievement Program. And so we have a broad categorical program that says you should use these dollars consistent with an equity plan locally. And so rather than funding these individual requests that we list there, it would be up to colleges to determine how to use their allocation from the Student Equity and Achievement Plan consistent with an equity analysis to drive better outcomes.
Member Anderson?
Christian, quick question. With regard to the great work that the task force did, the 60 and the 16, how does that work onto our priority list? That's obviously a new request.
Yeah. So I think this would suggest, so one of the things we haven't done in the chart that was in your agenda is take the I think 15 to 18 requests and actually assign a priority. And so if the board wanted to do that, that would be I think certainly the board's prerogative. And so just some insights from the conversations we've had. I think folks in our meetings have suggested we need to have a clear message that if the state's made an existing obligation, it needs to fund that obligation. And so, I think that came up as a relatively high priority among those conversations. And then I would say certainly that faculty and staff diversity task force recommendations have been brought to us by a variety of groups.
Member Creel?
Yeah, I was wondering, just for context, and maybe this is something we'll be learning in our orientations. Historically, as we've put together as a board priorities for the budget recommendations that we put forward, it would just be helpful, not now because it probably will require a little bit of diligence on your end, just understanding like how our priorities stack against what actually gets passed, so we have a sense of the trends of the budgets we put forward, what actual recommendations are accepted, and perhaps we can learn from what tactics we've taken to actually achieve that.
Yeah, and I would just make 2 points there just to highlight things we've talked a lot about that. I think one, the long history, the 30-year history of community college funding has been largely the administration and legislature funding community colleges at the level of the Proposition 98 minimum guarantee. I think we have heard a lot from our constituents that we need to do more to push for additional funding beyond the guarantee. I would say I think we need to figure out a political strategy to make that viable, that it today I think has not been a real conversation about how the governor and legislature fund. And so we often ask for more than the guarantee and we typically get less. I would say the other part of this conversation, and I think a clear message over the past year has been the community college stakeholders need to be on the same page about what the system's priorities are. And so I think we were excited, grateful for the involvement of a variety of groups in developing this request. And so I think one of the things we need to think about moving forward is how as a system do we rally together in support of a coordinated request.
Okay, we have four requests for public comment, and that would consume the rest of our meeting if everybody spoke for 3 minutes. What we're going to ask is, as they do in the legislature, sometimes people line up and when somebody's already said what they're going to say, and they can just add a me too. Also, I would appreciate it if people could limit their remarks to 2 minutes rather than 3 minutes. And even less than that if possible, when to get your point across. So we're going to start calling them up, but we really would appreciate cooperation on this to avoid redundancy, but to get all the key points across. And we really appreciate the interest of the community in this item.
Before we start this process, I just wanted to add my support of Member Costa's request. I'm hoping that that can be incorporated, especially given that this administration is fully aware and very supportive of and recognize housing as a critical issue here in California. And I don't think it's out of the norm that we should be considering this as both an equity and an inclusion issue for our students, so I just wanted to put myself on the record. So the first four speakers, Joe Hernandez, Javier Rodriguez, Christopher Lau, and Jesse Fernandez.
While they're coming up, can I
Yeah,
just say one
certainly,
thing?
you may.
I'd like to amend the description of Vice Chancellor's presentation from clinical to very instructive and appropriately factual.
Okay, and those of you who have already signed up to speak, please come to the front of the room so that we can expedite this process going forward.
And so the next three, I'll give you your names, would be Rebecca Silbert, Danny Morello, as two, and then those next two, if you would come forward, that would be great.
How's it going?
Hello.
My name is Jesse Fernandez. I'm a formerly incarcerated folk. I graduated from Pasadena City College, but when I started school there, unfortunately, there was no support services for me. So I kind of felt like I wasn't really represented there well. I didn't really see nobody like me. I identify as a gang member. And it was real hard navigating through this institution. So there was a lot of times often that I felt like not even going back, that I didn't belong. If it wasn't for the support through Homeboy Industries that guided me and helped me navigate through school and really was there, I would have never graduated. And if it wasn't for that type of support, I would have never have been 2019 the commencement speaker for Pasadena City College. I would never have been able to get into UC Berkeley. I would never have been able to study abroad. And I felt like individuals like me were not really represented well in these institutions. And it's sad, but it's a blessing that when I graduated, a program was rising up. And I am able to work there now as a professional expert to help out formerly incarcerated folks. Wish I had that opportunity, would have been there when I was there, but nevertheless, is there for folks that are coming right behind me. And I just hope that there will be more programs like this, and it doesn't take for us to be on campus to realize that we're there, you know what I mean? It would be real fortunate if programs are already there situated
30 seconds.
to allow us to know that they're there for us. Reason why I want to go to UC Berkeley, because I know there's folks just like me, that look like me, that identify like me, that I know that I'll have strong support there. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks and congratulations.
My name is Christopher Loa. I spent 1.5 my life in prison. I was just incarcerated. I was just paroled last week. And I was doing college in Pelican Bay State Prison. And now that I've paroled, I've decided that I want to continue my education because it's the only thing I feel that I could do to give back to my community. Like Jesse was saying, it's really hard, the way I look, the way I am, for people to take me serious sometimes, for people to get past the way I look and get to know who I am. I want to enroll in a college that doesn't have a program, because the college where I'm at, Citrus College, they don't have a program for formerly incarcerated people and stuff like that. So I'm gonna have to do it on my own, and that's kind of tough. So I'm sure there's gonna be days where I don't want to go, or hopefully that doesn't happen, but I feel like it may. So these programs really help people, you know, and they need to be, the funding and all that needs to be brought through. Like he said, I'm trying to be like what he's doing. I would like to do what he's doing and stuff like that. It's just really hard, you know, getting out, coming home, and not having nothing, and not having nobody to have your back to say you could do it, you know. So when you have somebody of like-minded people that look like you and that have done it, it makes you feel a little bit better that you could do it. So that's what I'm hoping to do, and I hope you can fund this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Joe Luis Hernandez, and I started community college in 2012 as a two-time high school dropout. I finished in home studies, which really isn't traditional. And I started at remedial English and math, the lowest level at my college. And I didn't have the support that we have, the programs that we have now. And as a formerly incarcerated student, and even someone that didn't do high school the traditional way or school the traditional way, it was a community college that changed the way that I saw education and what I can do. And it was an institutional agent, a counselor in my TRIO program and my EOPS program that told me that I could succeed and I could write a thesis. And I was like, I don't know what that is. I'm writing 250 words, and she's like, it's a little book. And I was like, I'm never gonna do that. And I graduated Mount San Antonio College with my associates. I went to Cal State LA and got my bachelor's of rehabilitational services. And then I decided that there was nobody like me at these schools that was formerly incarcerated, that was a gang member, that was a drug addict, that identified openly. So I made the decision and I applied to Cal State Long Beach for the Student Development Higher Education program. And I felt like dropping out my first semester after making it into one of the highly selective master's program. And then I found out about what was going on in the community colleges and what Danny Murillo was doing with formerly incarcerated students. And I asked myself, do I have a place in a community college? Today I work at Rio Hondo College. I am the educational consultant for our RISE Scholars Program, which is a program for formerly incarcerated students. And so for me to not just be a formerly incarcerated student, but formerly incarcerated professional. Actually, I'm still a student. I'm in my PhD program at Claremont, and a researcher studying the assets that we possess as formerly incarcerated people, not a deficit-based perspective, right? But looking at how we do this. And so it's really important that you choose to fund this, because I'm here and I decided on just a hope and a prayer that maybe I'll get hired because of my felonies, and here I am.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us today. My name is Javier Rodriguez, and just got my master's from UCLA, in the Department of Social Welfare. So I was born and raised in Watts, California, formerly incarcerated youth, former drug addict. Got pushed out of high school, so high school dropout. The reason why I got back into college, kind of what Rebecca Silbert mentioned, was for the Pell Grant. You know, my sister said, hey, you want to go to school? They're not going to provide you a background check. You know, stuff like that when I was 19 years old, telling me I was going to get free money for school. So I was like, man, like whoever thinks school's going to pay me to go to school. Never imagined it after getting pushed out of school. So the opportunity to go back to school and get the financial support that was needed was huge. Navigating it, that journey. Along the way, I come to find people that came through from my past experience, which was very instrumental in my success. One of my biggest support system was the peer mentorship support of formerly incarcerated communities on campus. A lot of times, being able to have someone that can relate to you, especially at UCLA, where you know, I felt alone, kind of isolated. So having other students that can relate, having a community there, being able to co-found Underground Scholars at UCLA, and understanding the importance of having the mentorship alone. We envisioned it how it happened from us just going undergraduate students and us helping each other to go to graduate school, and then from graduate school, you know, being able to succeed and getting these master's degrees, to be able to get the opportunities that a lot of times when we have convictions, we deal with the barriers. We don't have the same opportunities within employment and the profession. So we just came to find that as former incarcerated students, we have each other's support. We just tend to go a long way, and that's the most important thing we come to find. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can we also call up Elizabeth Ocampo and Jacqueline Rodriguez?
Good morning again. Thank you. It's Rebecca Silbert. I'm here briefly, not just to raise the percentage of tattoos in your audience, but to thank you for the allocation for currently and formerly incarcerated students. But I want to take just a minute to let you know what you're doing nationally. The nonprofit initiative that I lead started in 2015. It's ending this year. In 2015, the students were invisible or unserved. And we didn't know what this was going to look like. In the East Coast, it's about 2/3 privates leading the work. And in other states, it tends to be the Catholic colleges. In others, it's the state system. So we didn't know what was going to happen. And here's what happened. You have 19 of your community colleges teaching face-to-face ADT pathways inside our state prisons, almost 5,000 students. That's from 0 in 2015 to now. The only limit on demand there is space. Every time I go to a prison, students come up and say, I want more classes. They want the ADT, they want to transfer. On campuses, students were relatively invisible. Now you have about 35 and more of your colleges with programs supporting these students. But they're doing it on a wing and a prayer, and they're doing it on other duties as assigned, and the statement of support from your office is incredible. You know, look, mass incarceration is a disaster, and the estimate is that there are 8 million Californians who've been affected. This is not the answer, but it is one answer. We know it changes lives.
30
We know it
seconds.
reduces recidivism. This is what public education is for, and to lead the nation and stand up and say, our public system is going to attack this and help fix it, puts you ahead of every other state.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Danny Murillo. I work at the Opportunity Institute, and Rebecca Silver is my supervisor. My educational experience started in solitary confinement in 2008. I started in a community college program, and when I came home in 2010, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew that I wanted to continue my education. I didn't know where it was going to take me. But for me, when I started community college, I knew that there was resources there, but I had to go look for them. And I had to constantly ask people for help, and the more I showed up to spaces and campus, people were supportive. But at the end of the day, it was something that I had to do on my own, and I had to go to every space on campus to look for that support. The support was there, and the support was given. The California Community College that I attended became my sanctuary. It was this place where it allowed me to grow into the person that I've now become. I graduated from community college in 2012, transferred to UC Berkeley in 2012, graduated in 2015. Since then, I've been working with formerly incarcerated students, helping them continue their education. 2019 now, it is an honor and a privilege, and it's transformative to sit here before you and talk about all of the students that I've met that have started in prison, continued their education in community college, transferred to their bachelor's, and now pursuing bachelor's, master's, PhDs, and law school. This is the power that education has. Not only can it empower an individual, but also can transform families and communities. Since coming home from prison, my little brother was also caught up in the gang life. That was in 2010.
30 seconds.
2019, my little brother is about to start his first semester at the University of California, Santa Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Casillas Ocampo. I'm a senior at San Francisco State University, a Project Rebound student, and a single mother of 2. As you guys heard a lot of stories, I share a very similar experience to them. I got involved in gangs as a youth. At the age of 13, I ended up incarcerated. My parents came here chasing the American dream, but ended up with a nightmare. Myself and both my younger brothers, all 3 of us ended up incarcerated. They ended up in the system until they aged out. I was lucky not to go that route. Maybe because I was a woman, I don't know. When I first walked into College of San Mateo, I recognized somebody. I didn't know where I recognized her from, but she eventually told me we were locked up together. She was a faculty there. So it was very surprising because that's the first time I ever seen myself in somebody else, that could be me. So now, through Project Change, Project Rebound, Underground Scholars, Danny Murillo, all the amazing people I have met, I'm able to empower others like myself. I'm able to give them a better vision, able to just be myself and let them see themselves in me, just like I did that when I first walked into that campus. I just want you guys to consider this budget, because these adults coming out of jails, coming out of prisons, they were children first. A lot of those children were failed by a system that took them as a price tag. So please consider this $10 million budget to help, these folks grow and give them a second chance.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jacqueline Rodriguez. I am a formerly incarcerated student at College of San Mateo, involved with Project Change and a student ambassador for UC Berkeley Underground Scholars. I was first incarcerated at the age of 12. I did 3.5 years in the juvenile halls and the camps. As a middle schooler, it was very difficult to learn any material while I was in there because the curriculum being taught was the same for all students in all grades, mostly focused on high school. I saw girls with so much potential graduate from high school while still in custody, but not have any hope of pursuing higher education because of the lack of resources for students like us. I recall having conversations with these young girls about possible careers and any programs. About possible careers, we had high hopes for our careers, but because we didn't have any programs or people to talk to about higher ed, they seemed like pipe dreams to us. None of us knew how to take the first steps to enroll into college or who to speak to start the process. What I experienced on the inside motivated me to want to do better for myself, my 2 children, and my community. I am now an honors student, finishing up my 3rd year at College of San Mateo, hoping to receive associate degrees in 4 different subjects by next year, transfer to a 4-year, and eventually head to law school. If it weren't for programs like Project Change and Underground Scholars, I truly believe I would have given up during my first year in college. College is challenging as it is, and coming from a background like mine, it makes it so much more difficult to have self-confidence and motivation. These programs have helped me in every way possible throughout my educational journey, and I believe that all students that have been through the
30
justice
seconds.
system, especially the juvenile justice system, should be able to be given the opportunity and resources to continue with their education so they can re-envision themselves and their future. I strongly suggest that any state budget request funding for currently or formerly incarcerated students must include juvenile justice-involved students. These students, like me, have experienced the traumas of system-involved and education disruption as children. For this reason, students with juvenile justice system involvement are the most vulnerable and need most help in order to help break the school-to-prison pipeline. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next 4 would be Joanna Beldana, Eric Stone, Ashley Flores, and Gregory Mendoza. And these 4 will be followed by Michael Saavedra, Robert Bowman, Janine Meyer, and Jumi Glover, sorry.
Well, good morning. My name is Johanna Saldua. I am a mother of 3, being incarcerated. I lost custody of my kids due to an addiction. I came today to express my gratitude for you guys, taking the time to listen to us. I was sentenced to 365 days in our rehab program instead of 6 years in prison due to a felony charge last year. After completing my treatment, I was given the opportunity to go to school, and that has changed my life, and it gave me a perspective, a different perspective on life. It gave me a purpose to live again, to fight for my kids, to recover myself as a human being. Let's remember, when we punish someone, we're trying to protect the public, and we're trying to rehabilitate that person, to include that person in society again. But we're not really giving that person enough tools to get rehabilitated. So education for me is that tool that we need. As I'm a student now, I can tell you that I have a different
30 seconds.
view in life. And as I said before, this gave me a purpose and a commitment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ashley Flores. I was a peer mentor for the Transitions Collective program at Palomar College, and also the president for the club there that we have. As a peer mentor, I see all the students, my mentees, succeed. I know that they have all had struggles, and now see them having a better pathway while we lead them. Also, when I first got hired for the program, I also have previous record that now I see a connection with them but previous to before getting hired, I personally wanted to drop out. But when Martin Leva hired me, I had a better chance of staying because I saw myself within them, and then me being the peer mentor, I felt like I had a sense of belonging while they saw me as a sense of belonging, like it was a back and forth. So I want to thank you guys for having us here because this is a big step, and it would be a big step if you guys did see us as a company.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Eric Stone. I am 42 years old. I spent close to 19 years of my life as a recidivist in the California prison system. 8 of those years was in the SHU program. I was a validated prison gang member, and I paroled in almost 2 years ago. I got a hold of a guy named Martin Leva, who was here yesterday and spoke to you. He is an amazing guy. Much thanks to Martin. And so now where I'm at in my life is I'm a full-time college student. I have 2 jobs on campus. I'm the treasurer of our Transitions Collective program. And what that offers is a huge support network. In 2 months from now, I'll be off parole for the first time since I was, I've been under some type of supervision since I was about 14 years old. And I did get off parole one time. That was just due to fighting a case right here in county jail for 4 years for a 3 strikes case. Without the transitions program, I wouldn't have been able to make it as far as I've made it right now. And the bottom line is, if everyone wants to reduce crime, right, it's through higher education. People with master's degrees, they don't go back to prison. People with associate's degrees have a better chance of staying out of prison.
30 seconds.
You can't have 1 foot in academia and 1 foot in the street life. So I encourage you guys to fund as much as you can to programs like this.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Gregory Mendoza. I am first in my family to even go to college. If it wouldn't have been for the Transitions program at my community college, I would not be in school. Like Transitions Collective has helped me out a lot. When I first started, Transitions program was not there, but once I found out about it, it gave me that foundation. We do a lot of community stuff. We support one another. But it has opened so many doors that I hope to continue to keep striving. I would like to get my AA, transfer to a 4-year university, get my bachelor's, get my master's, and get in the education field, you know? But all of that is not possible if we don't have those resources there. So definitely take in consideration just keep funding so programs like that could keep going because it is changing lives. You see it with us right here. You see it with the guys that came before us. So yeah, like a little bit about myself real quick. I started getting locked up when I was 13 years old. 18 years old, I hit prison. I did 5 years. I didn't know what to do with myself, but I knew I was done with just living the lifestyle. Definitely going to school saved my life. That's what saved my life and gave me a purpose. Being able to work on campus definitely motivates me to just want to be in this type of spaces that I never saw myself before. And that's why I'm a big advocate for the Transitions program and just for anybody that has been formerly incarcerated or system impacted to continue in education. Thank you.
Thank you.
And while the next 4 speakers are coming up, I'd like to queue up Barry Snell, Donald Gerard, and Louise Jaffe, as well as Debbie Klein.
Go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Michael Saavedra. I am formerly incarcerated. I spent 19 and a half years in prison, with 15 of those years in solitary confinement. I was released in 2017. While I was inside, I took some correspondence college courses. So when I was released, I wanted to continue that to get my AA. And so as soon as I was released, I enrolled in RCC, Riverside City College right here. And I come to find out that RCC actually hosts the mandatory parole meetings called the PAC meetings. However, RCC doesn't host or promote or support formerly incarcerated students. So in 2018, I co-founded Transitioning Minds, a formerly incarcerated student club at RCC, in order to give other people like me a welcoming space and the ability to connect with and transfer to UCs and CSUs who have programs and resources for formerly incarcerated students. However, again, RCC's administration does not wish to support us or our events, which include outreach events to the community. Like we do expungement clinics, trying to help people remove felonies from their records so that they don't have to have those stigmas and can move on to get a job and housing. So I ask all of y'all to please pass this initiative and support us in getting more funding and programs for our student club at RCC, because we have been doing this from the bottom of our heart with no pay, just voluntarily, and it's become really frustrating to the point that I want to give up this club. I want to give up even RCC because of the lack of diversity and the lack of appreciation and support for people of color and people who are formerly incarcerated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jamie Glover, and I just really want to speak to the importance of providing funding for programs that target previously incarcerated students. I am previously incarcerated myself. I spent several years in and out of jail, and I really, for a long time, I thought I had permanently changed the course of my life due to incarceration. But I am a first-generation college graduate from Shasta Community College, and I'm a part of the Step Up program. And the Step Up program has been an amazing resource and has really impacted my life and my community. I watch so many people I know also succeeding. It's been a huge bridge to my success. If it wasn't for a program that recognizes my adverse experiences as a barrier, I don't think I would be where I am today. And I don't speak just for myself, but countless others as I've watched continue to succeed through this program.
Thank you.
Thank you for your attention. My name's Janine Meyer. I work for the EOPS program at Shasta College, but I'm here today in support of the Step Up program, a Shasta Technical Education Program Unified Partnership. Step Up provides vocational training to students that have been formerly incarcerated. And we're talking today about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I just want to remind you all that students impacted by the justice system are disproportionately affected by students of color, or disproportionately affected. I'm a first-generation college student, graduate of Shasta College. Life experiences that created barriers to my success were a low-income family. I'm a single parent. I invested many years of my life to my drug addiction, and criminal behavior resulted in a criminal record. But when I got to school, I had a couple of years clean, and I found that I was self-stigmatizing. Not only self-stigmatizing, but a stigma from the community because of my history. And fortunately for me, I was able to have my felony expunged because of the drug treatment program that I was able to participate in, which is not the case for a lot of students that are impacted by the justice system. What I'm hearing today is that there's a huge pool of talent with students that have been formerly incarcerated, and having somebody to identify with on campus is very important. I didn't have anyone when I was there, but the Step Up program provides people like that, and in EOPS I'm able to connect with the Step Up students. So I'm really asking you to consider expanding funding for formerly incarcerated students. It provides health to our communities and our state. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. On behalf of Dr. Joe Wise, our president, greetings from Shasta College in the northern part of the state. My name is Robert Bowman, and I am the program director for the Shasta College Step Up program. Over the past 5 years, Step Up has had 75 students earn certificates and/or associate's degrees. I currently have 125 students in our program with an average cumulative GPA of 3.12. Our program partners with a coalition of law enforcement, nonprofit, and community-based organizations across the 3 counties that constitute our district to provide restorative justice through education to the communities within our district. The recidivism rate for current and former step-up students is 12%, compared to the 50% in the counties that our district serves. Our students, like the ones you have heard today, are a living testimony that programs like this work. In order to continue to remain successful and adhere to the board and the chancellor's mission of increasing the number of certificates and degrees, the thing our students need most is consistency. They need to know from one semester to another that there's programs like Step Up, RISE, and other programs throughout the state are going to be there from spring to fall and not rely solely on grant support. The other thing that students need is to know that the equity and inclusion, also
30
the
seconds.
umbrella of that, falls under restorative justice and formerly incarcerated as well. So we urge the support of an amendment to the education code to include formerly incarcerated students as an equity and achievement population. Thank you so much for your time and support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the next 4 are seating themselves. Can we get Corey Noakes, Jessica Gibb, Akin Gidi, and I won't even try the last name, and John Stanskus, as well as Larry Galizio.
Please begin.
Good morning, board members. I'm Barry Snell, trustee for Santa Monica College. I'm here today with my colleagues, Louise Jaffe, Don Gerard. Our superintendent, Catherine Jeffrey, is unable to be with us today. She's in a meeting at the state, analyst in the final report for the community college bachelor's program, but sends her regards. Santa Monica is proud to be #1 in transfer to the University of California system for 28 years. We're also pleased to be #1 in transfer to African American students to the UCs, which is 3 times the state average. We're also pleased to be #1 with Latin student transfers to UCs, which is 2 times the state average. Last year, we transferred 3,000 students to the UCs, CSUs, and other 4-year community colleges, well, 4-year colleges, excuse me. We think our success in transfers is due to part to our very low student to counselor ratio, which is under 300 to 1, better than half than the state average, which is about 600 to 1. However, we are not content with our success rates. Santa Monica College is fully committed to our system of vision for success. In the material we're passing out,
30 seconds.
there's a reprint from our fall schedule touting our AB 705 results, which is 55% higher, has a 56% higher completion rate in English 1. And this fall, we're experiencing a 76% increase in our enrollment for transfer level math. We're also sharing with you flyers on area of interest, which is how we are describing our guided pathways. I'm wearing a lantern featuring.
Time.
In closing, I want to thank you for allowing us to speak with you today.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Don Gerard. I'm Senior Director of Government Relations at Santa Monica College. We passed this out to you. I want to have you look at this for a bit. The bottom graph is kind of an indication of where we all were at one point. It was the funding transition from program-based funding to access-based funding, and it's a situation where basically everyone benefited. The middle graph is where we are today. You can see that there's a large group of blue bars and Yesterday, some folks spoke, those folks represented by the blue bars, and they were basically asking that those blue bars be higher, that there could be or would hope to be more money in the allocation that would give them the new money. We're very pleased that the other 26 districts have retained the same funding as they had the prior year. That's where we are now. We're bringing forward to you a future problem, and the future problem takes place in 21-22, and that future problem is that there will be the possibility, probability perhaps, of an actual reduction in funding for about 26 of the community colleges. And the issue here is that those 26 community colleges are responsible
30 seconds.
for 50% of the transfers to UC. The colleges affected, of course, are Cabrillo, Chabat Las Positas, Compton, Contra Costa, Foothill de Anza, Gavilan Joint, Glendale, Long Beach, Marin, Mendocino Lake, Monterey Peninsula, North Orange County, Ohlone, Palomar, Peralta, San Francisco, San Luis Obispo, San Mateo, Santa Clarita, Santa Monica, Sierra Joint, Solano, Sonoma County, South Orange County, Southwestern, West Valley, Mission.
Thank you.
I'm Louise Jaffe, Santa Monica College trustee. So the SCFF model takes a carrot and a stick approach. We like carrots. Carrots are good. If you truly believe a stick is needed, though, in what situation? What's the kind of institutional behavior that requires a stick? Is it consistent with Vision for Success to take money away from colleges that are fully and truly implementing guided pathways, AB 705, and other research-based reforms? And from the state perspective, is this a stick or will it be a shovel, digging a hole for ourselves? How will cutting funding from colleges currently providing 50% of all transfers to UC help the state increase by 35% the number of community college students transferring? We believe the concept of making progress consistent with Vision for Success is a useful and an actionable concept for evaluating when, if ever, a stick is appropriate and productive. That would better align with helping students and realizing the system goals. Cuts in funding inevitably translate as cuts in access or in support. At SMC, a cut of $1 million translates to a loss of more than 3,700 available class seats. P2 projected cuts to the system exceed $100 million.
30 seconds.
Loss of funding has a direct negative impact on access and support for students at those districts. Don's referred to these projected cuts as a 2022 problem. The cuts are in 2022, but the time is now to work on a solution. Now, while the economy's good, while the state's not yet in a seriously contracting economy, when we all may have to make deep cuts, we can responsibly figure out and work on a solution to keep districts whole that are making progress. Lastly, on a happy note, we want you to know that this year Santa Monica College is celebrating its 90th year. We have opened a spectacular and transformative new student services building. We will be inviting all of you to our grand opening and celebration on October 22nd. I hope you can come. It's really, like many things today, very moving to see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning again. I'm Debbie Klein with the Faculty Association of California Community Colleges. FAC would like to respectfully ask of this board to consider the prioritization of faculty in the budget, the hiring of full-time faculty with an emphasis on the diversification of the faculty, as well as part-time faculty support. And we also wanted to say that we appreciate the inclusion of the support for part-time faculty equity in the budget, including compensation, health benefits, and office hours. We also appreciate the citation of our recently published paper, Why Faculty Matter, the Role of Faculty in the Success of Community College Students. And as I think you all know, the research shows conclusively that student access to faculty is the single most critical college-controlled factor for student success. More full-time faculty hires and support for part-time faculty equity will increase student access to faculty and thus move the needle in closing equity and achievement gaps. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we have our fabulous Final Five coming up here.
Mhm.
You want to call those names again?
All right, my name is Corey Noakes, and I'm a transition student at Palomar College. And as everyone's been saying already today, education is the greatest tool to combat recidivism. Unfortunately, I'm a benefactor of that opportunity and was able to receive my college degree while I was incarcerated. I paroled from the California Department of Corrections on April 6, 2019. And regardless of the changes I had made after 5 years incarcerated, reentry was going to have some challenges that I was going to have to go through. So I was introduced to the Transitions program by a friend of mine who's in this room, who spoke earlier. And Transitions for me has been that much needed social network. People were there who had been through what I had been through, and people could support me and plug me into the programs that would allow me to successfully transition back into society. And based on my success, I was granted academic renewal. I'll be applying for transfer to four-year universities in October, pursuing my master's degree in business administration. I've been offered employment on campus. I was given the opportunity to be the Transitions Program graduation speaker, and also I've been nominated to be the 2020 graduation commencement speaker at Palomar College. And none of this would have been possible without the Transitions Program and other programs like this. So I would definitely encourage everyone to vote for programs like this. It's very helpful, and there's a lot of very bright students out there that just need this opportunity and would make the whole community and the whole college a better place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jessica Cobb. I'm director of Norco College's prison education community. I just wanted to tell you that, even with all the amazing work that we've done over the past few years, there's still an immense need for face-to-face community college offerings inside of our prisons. Norco College has one of the more robust programs in the system. This semester, we're offering 27 sections and serving 250 students. We offer all Golden 4 courses every term, as well as lab sciences. This spring, we just had our first graduates. 6 students received their associate's degrees, and this fall we'll have 40 more graduates, and about half of those degrees will be associate's degrees for transfer. Our students are incredibly successful. Compared to their campus counterparts, our students have higher course completion rates, they have higher course success rates, and they have higher course GPAs. And we're talking about a population that's primarily low-income men of color. We've been able to have this kind of success because of immense investments from our college, because of a lot of planning that we've done, and because we've just been very fortunate in our prison partners. But I can tell you as the director that I still feel like I'm flying by the seat of my pants when I'm doing this work. As a community college system, we really need to build an infrastructure around these programs so that every student, no matter where he's incarcerated,
30 seconds.
he or she is incarcerated, or no matter what's going on with their college, has the same opportunity for success. I'm going to briefly introduce my student, Akin. He was our phenomenal Norco College student inside California Rehabilitation Center, and he's a phenomenal Norco College leader outside on our campus.
Hi, my name is Akin Jai. A little background. I'm saying to myself, I did 13 years in the military, 2 tours to Iraq. In 2015, I kind of got in a little trouble, but while I was incarcerated, I took it upon myself to go to school and took a vocation. When I got out, it's only been like 10 months I'm out, and I achieved my associate degree in social and behavior science. Next year, I will achieve 2 more associate's degree in math and science and drafting. I really want you guys to fund formerly incarcerated personnel, so everybody has families, and they need to provide their family. I feel like education is the key, and that's one way out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Larry Glizio Community College League, and Akeen and all of the speakers that we've seen emphasize, illustrate, inspire all of us in what we do, and it makes me really proud to be part of this confederation of districts and all the great work. So the timing of the prior panel talking about inclusion and diversity, and then the ability to watch and listen. Vice Chancellor Osmeña mentioned political strategy. And so I'm here to talk a little bit about political strategy, understanding I have really very little time, but part of our political strategy has to be getting individuals such as those we've heard in front of the legislature and to remind them exactly what we do and the diversity and the strength of our system and how critical it is for the state of California. So that's one. I also wanted to belatedly congratulate members Escobar, Carrillo, and Salazar and welcome them to the Board of Governors on behalf of the League. So very quickly, I'm concerned because in terms of political strategy, we have to be working collectively at all 73 districts, all of us with the different stakeholders, and bringing a consistent message. I mean, we all know that. And from my vantage point at the League, I'm increasingly concerned what I'm hearing throughout the state about concerns about specifically the implementation of the student-centered funding formula. And I would ask that this body, for its November meeting, have on the agenda the student-centered funding formula. If you read the document, the narrative, and the information for the legislative ask, it's fantastic. And I think it illustrates that not only do we need more funding, but that, like most districts, the Chancellor's Office lacks the capacity to do the kind of work it needs to do for data integrity, research, and analysis. So we support more positions and more support, and that's really critical. We'll be speaking with Chancellor Oakley at the CEO board. We have some recommendations, but there are significant concerns about the implementation that is creating a lot of consternation, more volatility, and more uncertainty that we need to remedy as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
And then the last speaker is John Stanskus.
Last but not least.
I brought my squad. I think it's important that you see them with me, because when I come speak to you all the time, you need to know that this is the executive committee that I'm speaking for, that represents all of the faculty in the state about academic and professional matters. And so I wanted to show them to you here and deliver the message they ordered me to deliver to you. Which is the number one priority of everything that's listed on here for the Academic Senate is the faculty and staff diversification recommendations. And I really hope that that is prioritized as system priority number one. Beyond that, I think we had speakers today. We have a tremendous list here of all of the things that we would like to fund. And to one of the questions earlier, how do we do in these processes when we have tremendous lists? Not well. There is more need in our system than we can chop up into little pieces from Prop 98. And so our only other priority would be to fully fund the colleges to serve their communities, because we cannot right now, and we make choices
30 seconds.
about who we have to serve. And that is not why any of us, and I don't think any of you, are here. We're here because we believe in the social justice mission of the California community colleges to make a difference in communities that we serve. And perhaps it's time for this board to consider a recommendation to the legislature that as we investigate our built-in biases to the systems in which we work, that perhaps we need to investigate what bias is built into Prop 98 that impacts our students. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, that ends public comment. We have a board member comment. Member Salazar.
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank all the reentry students who came before us today and told us about your compelling stories, and thank you for your continued tenacity despite all the adversity that you've experienced in your lifetime. I think one of the things that I'm reflecting in today's budget, particularly the $10 million ongoing to support programs for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated persons, I would invite to what extent also are we maximizing other state investments for reentry populations? And is there a way to incentivize colleges to leverage existing resources? For instance, in LA County alone, there's about $100 million investment in the LA County Office Diversion and Reentry resources. So I just want to point out that there is huge investments, in particularly Prop 47, that I think if we're being creative, that we want to make sure that we're adequately utilizing so that the burden doesn't fall singularly on the community colleges to help address these challenges.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to add my thanks to all the formerly incarcerated folks who came out here today and used a lot of your valuable time to educate us. I think this board has been consistently very much supportive of programs for formerly incarcerated students. We urge you to take your advocacy to the state legislature and to your local boards of trustees, where you can also have an impact. And thank you very much for coming up here today. With that, I think we're ready to take a motion. I might ask Member Costa to present her amendment.
I'd like to move the action item as amended and specified earlier to include funding for feasibility studies for half of the colleges, and to direct staff to work with the administration on a funding source outside of the Proposition 98 guarantee.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Second, Member Rawlings. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. We're going to do our last action item now, item 2.5, the Academic Senate 50-year anniversary resolution. Executive Vice Chancellor Marty Alvarado.
Thank you. I'd also like to invite John Stanskis, President of Academic Senate, the Academic Senate leadership to join me. This item is to request that the board adopt a resolution that recognizes the 50 years of service that the Academic Senate has provided to our institutions, to our system, and most importantly, to our students. Thank you.
So move.
Oh, can we get a motion, please?
So move. Second.
Okay, so
Anderson.
who will, Anderson?
Yeah.
Okay. We're good?
Well,
We need to call
we need
the
to
question.
call the question.
Oh.
But do you have
I
any,
missed it.
any comments? No? Yes.
Just want to say thank you for your service. My mother is also a professor, and I know how important faculty is to students' lives. And I know that, sorry, I'm getting emotional, but I know that your commitment to your students is something that is really felt, even with those faculty's families as well, as you see your students succeed. And so I want to just thank you for your service.
I wanted to echo that chorus. It is so appropriate that this incredibly diverse board is the one celebrating such a milestone in faculty and community college history. So thank you collectively and individually for your work. It has been such a pleasure to get to know you and to actually make milestone change, historic change for our system with your continuous collaboration. So thank you so very much for everything you've been doing.
I'd like to echo congratulations and really a big thank you to Academic Senate for all these years. I've been in the system now 25 years, and I can't think of a time where Academic Senate has not been a partner to classified employees across the state at every single college I've been at. And so it's been transformative for our faculty and the advocacy that you do there, but it's also been transformative for our students and for our classified employees and really being able to move the system forward.
Perigo, Member Perigo.
I look out with such joy because these are my people, for sure. And I've worked with many of them, and I continue to work with many of them. And I don't even know if anybody in this room can fully appreciate the level of dedication that this group has to the faculty of this state, but by extension, of course, to the students of this state. And everything from helpful position papers that allow those of us who do leadership on campus to understand our role and our part of being a voice in the state, to really taking on challenging issues and bringing them to the forefront. And you do it with such grace and such dignity and such professionalism, and I don't think there are enough words that could be said here today to thank you for your, and in many cases, volunteering of your time to the service of this state. And I'm so proud to be a part of this organization and be just a little piece of the work that you do. And thank you from the bottom of my heart as a member of this board and as a member of a faculty group at a college for everything that you do.
Member Costa.
Yeah, if you guys are telling John what to do, you're doing a fabulous job. So keep it up. If you're the brain trust, you're doing great. No, I also just wanted to thank the Academic Senate as a relatively new board member. The role you play in how we develop policy is instrumental, and you've really provided me with a lot of great perspective about what's happening on campuses and the work that you do, all in betterment for our students, which is why we're all here. So thank you.
Member Grande.
I want to say me too to what Member Perigo said and what Member Costa said, and I can't thank you enough because literally, if it weren't for you, I would not be here. I was trained under the best and brightest. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Fitzgerald.
Thank you guys so much for your service. I want to echo my fellow board member comments. Obviously, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for faculty encouraging me on. Academic Academy, I had the pleasure of attending last week, really was a testament to the incredible nature of this executive team that you guys have this year and your willingness to work and listen to students. And I hope that, you know, as a student leader in the system, we can continue to work together to better the lives of our students, which I know wholeheartedly guides you guys in your vision for your executive team. So congratulations.
Member Zaragoza.
John Stanskis and squad, as well as all the people before, after, and everyone who's not here today. Thank you so much for your service to our system. And I mean, I love all of you. You're so amazing. And you have impacted not only us, but so many students' lives and have truly made such an impact on us. And so thank you for all of your work and all the work that you continue to do.
Okay, and I just want to add my 2 cents. I really appreciate the conciliatory and productive way that you all have worked with us through a lot of difficult issues over the past several years, and really appreciate it. And we're delighted to do this resolution. Is there another comment?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, just a ditto. Thank you for your partnership and congratulations on your anniversary, and thank you for your continued engagement on student success.
Do we have a motion, Member Perigo, perhaps?
I will gladly motion.
And a second?
Second.
Okay. Member Aguinaldo? All right. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Congratulations. Thank you.
I could be the other side back. Let's see, don't miss out here, Pam.
Oh, where are we going?
You want us this way?
Right? That would be nice.
Wish, tall's in the back.
Oh, okay, all right.
Okay.
We're touchy-feely.
Yeah, substantial, right?
Okay, we're going to go back now to the to the state and federal update. And although it breaks my heart, we're going to not be able to do the participatory governance and statewide engagement item because we're past time. We got another meeting that's supposed to start immediately. So we'll have to put that one over to the next meeting.
You're breaking Dr. Gonzalez's heart.
I know, and mine. But we're going to close with the state and federal update, which will. Oops, I apologize to Larry Galizio. I guess he had a comment he wanted to make on the Academic Senate resolution.
Congratulations,
thank you. Okay.
I didn't want to leave you out, Larry.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Yeah. We appreciate your smart brevity. Vice Chancellor Semenya.
I am standing in for Vice Chancellor Mattoon, who is representing the system in Washington this week. I will turn it over to Justin Selenick, who is a government relations analyst, to give the update.
Thank you. So I'd first like to start with a few activities government relations has done recently to fulfill our role of educating and advocating with state leaders. We've had a series of site visits for legislative staff, Department of Finance staff, and Legislative Analyst Office to look at the implementation progress on AB 705 and guided pathways. We've completed site visits at Tahoe College, Shasta College, Compton College, and we have upcoming visits at Solano College, Bakersfield College, and undetermined colleges in the Bay Area and Inland Empire coming up. We also are doing a briefing on the Promise program and AB 19 implementation in the Capitol on Thursday to update legislative staff on the progress of that program. And moving on to the actual legislation that has been occurring lately. As Chancellor Oakley mentioned yesterday, Friday was the last day of the legislative session. They sent several hundred bills to the governor's desk, and he has until October 13th to sign or veto those. The matrix that was sent around yesterday shows all of the bills that we've been tracking that are on the governor's desk. We have 15 that we have a support position on. I won't go into all of them. But there was a few that I did want to highlight. First, AB 48, the statewide bond bill that we talked about yesterday as well. I think because of the governor's role in negotiating the provisions of the bill, we can anticipate his signature as soon as possible. A bill that is actually kind of on a different track because it was sent to the governor back on September 3rd is AB 1504 by Assemblymember Medina. This is the bill that will provide our student senate with stable funding through the student representation fee. Right now, I think by my count, he has until Thursday to act on this bill, so the clock is ticking, but we hope that he signs it. We've had a support position on that bill. And a bill that didn't make it this far, but did generate a lot of interest and conversation in our system is AB 302 by Assemblymember Mark Berman. This was a bill that would require colleges to provide overnight parking for homeless students. At the end of August, the Senate Appropriations Committee significantly amended the bill, pushing the implementation back a year, as well as exempting colleges that are located within 250 feet of a elementary school. The author was dissatisfied with these amendments and elected to shelve the bill for the year, so it will not be up for consideration this year. However, he has stated he will reintroduce something next year, and also will be working with the governor on a solution to this issue. And the last bill I wanted to mention that was signed last week was a bill sponsored by the board, AB 1051 by Assemblymember Christy Smith. This bill provides an exemption to the 67% law for part-time nursing faculty. This will help a lot of nursing programs deal with the demands of the clinical component of their nursing programs when they can't when they have difficulty finding full-time nursing faculty, which is a problem for a lot of nursing programs. So I think I'll pause there for any questions on the state items before I go on to the federal.
I think Member Zaragoza. Pardon me? Oh, wait, after the federal. No, you don't want to talk about state issues? Yeah. I think it's better to break it up. Yeah.
I just really wanted to emphasize in this upcoming year, so not necessarily right now, but in this upcoming year to really just work closely with the Student Senate and all of the different resolutions that they've put forward. They work really hard to come up with these General Assemblies where all the students come together and vote, and all of those issues are a majority of what the students want. It really is just a collection of hard work over years and years, and so really just working closely with that, and I'd love to see updates on where those ones, specifically the ones that are coming from the Student Senate, end up going in the next year.
Member Fitzgerald.
Yeah, I want to echo my fellow student board member. I served in the Student Senate. The General Assembly is a really incredible thing because it was student-run, student-led, student-attended, student-focused. No other viewpoint except the California Community College System students. And so everything that came out of the General Assembly was the wish of the regular California Community College student. And I think it's really important that we carefully look at the priorities of the Student Senate and really consider them very strongly. And then I just wanted to make a quick comment on the particular amendment of 302 and make sure that my opinion is very well known. So I'll reread. B, sections 760.12 shall not apply to community college parking facilities located within 250 feet of an elementary school. That's the exact verbiage. I want to echo, I think all, if not most, of the Student Senate agrees that with Berman's statement that homeless students are not pedophiles to be kept away from children. This amendment is pretty incredibly offensive. And the point of this amendment was nothing other than to kill the bill. And I think it indicates a strong lack of urgency in addressing the homelessness crisis that we face, especially in my hometown of Stockton, California. And we have to do better as a system to recognize that urgency. And the legislature has to do better in that regard. Yeah, that concludes my comment.
Member Costa?
I wasn't going to talk about that bill, but based on my colleagues' comments, I do just want to raise something, which is if there was urgency, there would be funding associated. Outside of that, it's just an unfunded mandate for our districts. And safe parking does have a place to play in addressing homelessness, but it requires funding. There are capital improvements that need to be made. There are policies that have to be designed in order for it to be effective. And so, I didn't like the amendment either because I think in some ways it insinuates that being homeless is a crime, which it's not. But that said, there really has to be funding to support these types of programs. Otherwise, they're really not effective and they're not going to help any of our students.
Member Aguinaldo.
Sorry if I missed this, but did you cover AB 1689, College Mental Health Services?
That bill was held in the Appropriations Committee in the Assembly back in May. But that's definitely an issue we've been always interested in getting the access to those Prop 63 funds, and I think we've seen that in the budget.
And so we include something in the budget and legislative request. And I just want to acknowledge the comments. We did receive 2 proposals from the students as part of the budget and legislative requests, one related to ex officio members of this board, the other related to student voting powers of student trustees on local boards. When we brought those to the consultation council discussion, I think folks wanted to have more discussion about the implications of both of those, and so we've committed to further discussion.
Any other comments on state legislation? Okay, roll into the less fun part, which is federal.
So on just a couple of items, on the federal side, there were two pretty significant congressional retirements recently, or not retirements, maybe they're not running for re-election. The first was Susan Davis from the San Diego area, and that excuse me, and that is a bit of a loss for California because of her ranking in the House. She was the chair of the subcommittee on higher education, so she'll be difficult to replace. And then just this morning, Paul Cook is not running for re-election either, and he had been on the Veterans Committee, so he's been a strong advocate for veterans. So yeah, so we lost two of our delegation members just recently. The second item I wanted to mention is something that happened last week. The Federal Department of Veterans Affairs issued a suspension on the California State Approving Agency for Veterans Education. That's under CalVet. They are responsible for approving colleges to accept GI Bill benefits. There's been a longstanding dispute between the two agencies over some of the enforcement actions that California's agencies have taken, particularly on for-profit institutions. And so right now it's kind of in as the suspension came out, CSAVE's response was, we will continue to approve programs because there's state law that indicates that we still have this authority. So I think at this time, this is probably heading for the courts to decide at some point. The Chancellor's Office will be working with both state and federal partners to make sure that there's no disruption to student benefits, and we don't anticipate that happening at this time, but we'll continue to work on that. And that was it.
Any comments on the federal? Okay, with that, thank you. All right, fellow board members, we're down to board member reports. We are 11 minutes past our end date. We have a online college, Calvary College board meeting beginning 11 minutes ago. So I would encourage you to share only what is really necessary for the rest of us. So I'll just, if you want to speak, show your hand. Okay, Member Zaragoza.
Okay, well, I don't have my notes anymore because my iPad died, but it's okay. So I have had extensive conversations now with the UC student regents. I'm reaching out to the CSU trustees, and really just, I think one of my big focuses for this upcoming next year is trying to just realign our values and make sure that we're working together because we're stronger together. And a part of that is creating a transfer network. And so I've gotten responses from about 6 CSUs, 3 of the UCs, and of course I have the connection with my own UC now. And just trying to basically just create something where we can all just advocate together and really come together on these issues. And then I also wanted to comment on how incredible Academic Academy was this past weekend. And I think the real reason why it was incredible is because I'd say a lot of times, a lot of our conferences are really incredible and they're really great. But a lot of times, even though we do focus on student success, we don't really have a lot of time to listen to real student stories and have the students be the ones teaching, rather than just, everyone who's an expert on student success talking about student success. And so I think that was the real shift this weekend in Academic Academy, was just a lot of students were the ones who were teaching these things and explaining our side of issues, because a lot of times our issues kind of get stuck in these echo chambers with each other and they don't really let out of that. We're too afraid to, really voice them with faculty or staff or administration. And so it really did give us a really good feeling in the room that we really can create this change and make the culture a lot better between, sharing these problems and ideas and all of that. And so it was really, really good. And I think I also want to, welcome Cullum to the board. He's going to be great. He's a fighter. He's vocal. And he's going to do great this next year. And so I know he's got a whole bunch of stuff. I'm going to give most of the talking time to him. So.
Yeah, I guess we'll go right to Cullum.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Alexis. Again, I want to echo, I think Academic Academy was fantastic. I mean, there was a panel of students, and the attendees of Academic Academy were asking questions, and the students repeatedly said, look, we just want to be heard. And then you let them be heard. And I think that's extremely important. It's a great first step. So I just want to talk a little bit about my focuses in my first year on the Board of Governors. In my time in the system, I've noticed that there's some inconsistencies and a severe undervaluing of student leadership. And I'll talk a little bit about why. So in 1988, Governor Duque Mahian signed AB 1725, which you're probably all familiar with. Quote, under existing law, there are no express requirements that the Board of Governors develop guidelines or plans with respect to the Academic Senate and the role of students in governance, or that the board clarify and define particular matters with respect to executive office in the community colleges. This bill would require the Board of Governors to develop policies and guidelines concerning the Academic Senate and standards regarding the role of students in governance. Now, we have a very amazing Academic Senate. But statewide, our student organizations and the role of students in governance is not clear. I'll give you some example. Some institutions have robust associated student organizations, which, encouraged by their administrations, participate in many, if not every, shared governance committee on campus, and that's fantastic. But other institutions give students a seat and no voice. In some cases, I've seen students with an advisory vote, which are made to vote last. Some institutions have placed absolutely no priority in an active associated student organization, and thus, with every major decision made on campus, exclude the student voice. So what is the role of student leaders and students? We have a vision, the vision for success, and a funding formula, the student-centered funding formula, which together prioritize students as the most important part of the California community college system. And yet, in many cases, we severely still undervalue the student voice. So my focus in the first year on the Board of Governors is to find a way to more clearly define that role. Shared, recognizing how essential our voice is from the ground level on shared governance committees and on associated student organizations, all the way up to the Board of Governors. And only by prioritizing the inclusion of the student voice in this way can we clearly implement our vision for this system.
Thank you. Member Perigo.
Just very briefly, I wanted to touch on my visit to Lake Tahoe, and I really had an enjoyable time with Vice Chancellor Zasmena and Mattoon and with the Chancellor. And I wanted to go on that listening tour because the campus is much different than the campus I work at. It's much smaller. It's just very different in lots of ways. And so I wanted to get a different perspective than the one that I see every day. And so it was very interesting talking to them about the things they struggle with, a lot of the same things that the rest of us do in larger campuses. But one thing I was very impressed by and I wanted to bring to the board, because I think in the future it might be something worth talking to operations about. They had a really great enrollment management tool that they shared with us at the convocation. And I can tell you from working on a campus, enrollment management is very challenging. We don't have good tools to do the work. We don't have good tools that help us predict demand and need. And I think a lot of Guided Pathways work is really around the enrollment management, because although I may know how my discipline stacks the courses and how a student might move through my particular discipline, I don't necessarily know how my colleagues are using my discipline, and then how those classes may be not aligned correctly for their students to move through their programs with ease. And so as we have these larger campus conversations about how these things fit together, having good tools to do that are going to be necessary. And I'm not sure what vice presidents of academic affairs or instruction, whatever they're called on the various campuses, would want to see, or if that's something that we could champion. But I certainly would love for us to at least have some initial conversations on ways that we could help people do that work more easily. And in particular, I can tell you that most schedules are built by chairs, faculty members. The deans sign off on them, but the chairs actually construct them. And so having tools that somebody who doesn't have a PhD in VP-ery will be able to use as a tool would be helpful. And that's what I really liked about this system, is I could just really see clearly how, as a scheduling chair, that would have made sense to me, and I could have used those tools. The other thing I wanted to highlight was Chancellor Oakley, when he talked at the convocation, talked a lot about our need to have our voices more present, and we've heard a lot of that today in legislative matters. And so the other thing I'm hoping, and I've talked to some members of FACT, I've talked to, I think, ACCC members as well over time, of how can we create better pockets of information or activists amongst our various groups. You know, faculty groups are, you know, we're huge. We have these huge numbers. Students have huge numbers. We have the ability to really make our voices heard, but we often are lacking the information or any kind of mechanism to get people active. And even in my own district, we've been focused on that, trying to make sure we're sending in more letters of support or letters of disagreement on various pieces of legislation. But I would love to see us try to figure out a way that we could do this better. And so I've charged some of my colleagues with having conversations about that, and I'm just hoping that maybe we can start thinking about that. And since the chancellor brought it up, I just wanted to highlight that I think it's also an really important thing for us to do, and really use the weight of our numbers to move the dial sometimes. So, and that's my report. Thank you.
Member Aguinaldo.
I have 2 site visits coming up to Pierce College and Bakersfield College. I just wanted to extend the invitation to any other board members if they'd wanted to join. And lastly, I just wanted to thank RCC for their hospitality, for the wonderful time we had here. I will never let go of a selfie that I have with Vice Chancellor Osmeña and your tiger to remind him of his jovial and spirited side. So thank you very much for your hospitality. We've had a wonderful time here.
Member Grande.
I just wanted to provide a brief update and a precursor to November's agenda item on the work of the California Workforce Pathways Joint Advisory Committee. Our draft plan of the California State Plan for Career Technical Education, including requirements for the federal Strengthening Career and Technical Education for the 21st Century Act, will be coming before us in November. And the Chancellor's Office is hosting as a location today a stakeholders input group, and this this state plan needs to have as much student engagement, faculty support, and frontline industry professionals input to make sure that it really does take us through the 21st century. So I want everyone, get the word out. We need the input on that plan if we're going to make an impact on career education and workforce prep.
Thanks. Member Costa.
Just really briefly, I wanted to thank Sierra College President Willie Duncan and his staff for hosting Vice Chancellor Osmeña and myself at their campus to look at their current student housing, as well as previewing some plans that they have to use local bond funds to build further student housing on their campus. It was really an informative visit, and so I just want to thank them for that.
Member Salazar.
I'd like to echo my fellow board members' sentiment about RCC's incredible hospitality. Thank you for making my board meeting incredibly hospitable, and you set a bar very high, so I'm really hoping all board meetings are like this. Secondly, I want to thank the board's leadership, particularly on declaring October 14th to 18th Undocumented Student Week, and then our efforts around the statement on public charge. I also want to bring to the forefront, I think, another very vulnerable population, in this particular students who have mixed status or in mixed status families. As we come up to the financial aid season and students are completing their FAFSA forms, and particularly those who may have undocumented parents, concerns about providing that information on financial aid and what that may do both to encourage or dissuade students for applying for aid. So I just want to make sure that we continue to be at the forefront of ensuring that more and more students are filing and accessing the available resources to continue their education.
Okay, thanks. With that, I just want to add my thanks again to the Riverside Community College District and all the way they have treated us so well, President Anderson and Superintendent Isak. I also can't end this without thanking Christina Castro, who has to do a lot more work when we leave town, and I think everything went really smoothly.
It's my pleasure. Thank you all for the work you do.
So thanks, and with that, do we have any final public comments? Oh, we do. We have some public comment? We do have one.
Does Mr. Galizio still want to speak?
No.
Okay, all right. Then we have only one public comment, which is from Linda Valdez. Vasquez, excuse me, on AB 705 implementation. Is she here? Okay.
Thank you. Good morning. Again, Linda Vasquez with the Campaign for College Opportunity. I want to share some highlights about a report that we released today, but let me preface that by saying that earlier this year, I witnessed this board have a powerful dialogue around policy reform. In March, you approved historic regulations intended to strengthen the implementation of Assembly Bill 705. President Epstein, if I recall correctly, you said that approving those regulations was one of the most important votes you have made in your entire tenure on the board. Signed in 2017, colleges have finally arrived at the critical implementation timeline, and I know everyone is wondering, what are the early indicators that tell us how colleges are doing? In collaboration with the California Acceleration Project, today we released a regional progress report on the implementation efforts of AB 705. The report, titled "Getting There Are California Community Colleges Maximizing Student Completion of Transfer Level Math and English." The report analyzes early AB 705 implementation efforts at 47 community colleges across 3 regions in California: the Central Valley, the Inland Empire, and Los Angeles. You will all receive a hard copy in the mail in the coming weeks. Leave it up to snail mail. I hope it gets to you in a few weeks. And a digital copy in the next few days. The report tells us that AB 705 is driving dramatic changes in how California community colleges place students into English and math courses.
30 seconds.
However, there are areas of implementation that need your monitoring, including the continued, watching the continued presence of remedial education courses, which remains a dangerous option for students knowing what the data tell us. And included in the report also has a few recommendations that call the attention to ongoing data collection disaggregated by race and ethnicity, and I encourage you to add an agenda item in your November board meeting to talk further about those recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we will adjourn.